All right, the time is now 6 o'clock. I'll go ahead and call tonight's school board meeting to order. Roll call was taken, and we'll go ahead and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, so now we'll move on to item 3, which is to review, revise, and approve tonight's agenda. If there's no changes, I'll take a motion to approve the agenda as written. Moved by Vice Chair Walker Andrews, second by Trustee F. Garris. Is there any public comment on this agenda item? Seeing none, all trustees in favor of approving tonight's agenda as written, please indicate yes by raising your hand. Unanimous to all trustees present. And now we'll move on to item 4, which is to approve the minutes of the regular board meeting of January 9th, 2024. Is there a motion to approve those minutes? Moved by Trustee Wake, second by Trustee Witt. Any trustee comments? Any public comment on this agenda item? All trustees in favor for approving the regular meeting minutes of January 9th, please indicate yes by raising your hand. Unanimous to all trustees present. And now we'll move on to item 5, which is public comment. Public comment is set aside for the public to address the board as a body. It is not a time for board response or for the public to ask questions. Do not infringe on the right of privacy. Please sign in and spell your first and last name. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per speaker. The chair will interrupt and terminate an individual speaker if the statements are out of order or over 3 minutes or personally directed to an individual. Any public comment for tonight?
We do have a public comment tonight. Go ahead and approach the little seat, sign in, and state and spell your name for us.
All right, I am now. My name is Jill Tabor, Jilltaber. I am a parent of 3 kids at Lewis and Clark Elementary. I forwarded all of you today an email that was signed by 75, I think now, parents and supporters of Lewis and Clark School. I'm here tonight to speak public comment on my own behalf. This is my personal comment. I don't speak for everybody who signed that letter. I'm here for 2 reasons. The school district is obviously facing a budget crisis. And the thing that seems to be on the chopping block, unfortunately, are positions, I know at our elementary school, of teachers, particularly staff members called behavior interventionists, and potentially an art teacher who work with our kids every single day. And it's not just kids who have behavioral issues who this will affect. It will affect every student in every classroom at our elementary school. Because as a volunteer in our school, I'm in the school 1 day a week for roughly an hour. And there are very few times in which I am there in which I do not see a behavioral interventionist either working with a student who actively needs to be taken out of the classroom because they are acting out in some way, or I see these professionals running to different classrooms because they are busy all day. They take physical violence from students. They are punched, they are kicked, they're probably bitten. I don't know all of the details, but what I do know is that if those kids who are having those issues are left in the classroom, the person who's going to deal with it is an instructional teacher, and they don't have time. Our kids do not need to be put in the position of having to deal with that themselves. Now, I don't know if this district is considering the positions of administrators who fill this building to be on the chopping block to save money in the budget, but you knew the ESSER money was going to go away. You funded positions that should have been permanent with temporary funds, and that's a problem that our community needs to know about, and the district needs to be held accountable for it. I can guarantee that if any of you were at your jobs on a daily basis and there was a threat of physical violence to you and your boss said, hey, we don't have money to fund the security officer, you would find a way to save his job so that you weren't getting kicked at school. How can our kids learn if they are being threatened, if people who support kids are taken out of our schools? Thank you.
Any other public comment tonight? No further public comment.
All right, so now we'll move on to 5 or 6, which are reports and announcements. There's no oral report for the Health Insurance Trust Fund. And so now we'll move on to B, which are announcements from Superintendent Micah Hill.
All right, nothing but good news tonight. In case you missed it, we were approved by the Board of Public Ed for 2 charter schools. This is pretty historic to be in that inaugural group selected. To be honest, our Connect Academy, we were a little touch and go. We were on the cutting line. There were some challenges that the board was wrestling with relative to who has access to a charter school. They ultimately decided that that wasn't their job, that that was a legal responsibility of the legislature and the courts to settle, and so both of our applications were approved. That was the easy part, and now the hard work begins, and my team is ready to get after it, and we're getting underway with preparations, and we'll bring more information to the board and details when we get some of those other things more specifically ironed out. The Innovative Education Program Tax Credit, last year we garnered $14,100. I'm happy to announce that this year it is $331,600 from 16 donors. The names and the amounts that are donated are confidential, so we can't share out specific information. And I didn't calculate what the percentage increase was from 14,000 to 330,000, but it's a big number, I'm pretty sure. So we're excited about that. Our Transformational Learning Grant was also approved by the Board of Public Ed, and our lottery ball was selected number 4, which is great. There are currently 7 districts who are waitlisted for funding for 2024, and then we would be 4th in line, so we're about 11 down. So my hope is that we're at least going to be partially funded in 2025, fiscal year 2025, and if not, starting to see funds in fiscal year 2026. Over a 4-year period, this represents over $11 million for the district at a maximum because it's part permissive levy and part of it is state funding. So on the low end of that, it'd be about $5.5 million for our district. So we're excited about that. The tabled middle school calendar, just an update. We've been trying to reach out to OPI, but have not had any response as of yet. So we're hopeful to bring that back to the board at the next meeting. The primary issue is that we don't want to put the district in a position where we are jeopardizing our funding by having too few instructional hours or days as calculated by the Office of Public Instruction. And finally, just a calendar update. I will be out of the district on Tuesday and Wednesday next week at the Montana School Health Insurance Summit in Helena, where we are talking about the state health insurance trust. There are convening partners of 8 different organizations. I mentioned that last time. And so we will be digging in to see what we can get accomplished there. And then I will also be going February 4th through the 8th to Washington, D.C. As part of the Spark Arts entourage to the Any Given Child and Partners in Educational National Conference. And so I'm just looking forward to learning more about arts integration and community programs and connections. So that's my update for tonight.
All right, thank you, Superintendent Hill. So now we'll move on to item 7, which is new business, and we'll go into personnel negotiations and policy. And up first is an elementary action item to approve enrollments for early kindergarten program. And this is over to you, Assistant Superintendent Giamona.
Thank you. This is a typical report for us the past few months, so nothing new to report out to anybody.
Any questions by trustee? Vice Chair Walker Andrews?
Sorry. So how many kids are in that now?
Yep, so we have 15 at the three Title I schools that we put in to start the year, and then we have 29 still at Jefferson. So some of the additions can be attrition, families moving, new students enrolling from our initial approval date, which was earlier in the fall.
Trustee F. Garris, then trustee Decker.
Out of curiosity, the plan for next year, we had discussed adding other schools. Is there a plan for that or a vision for that?
Yeah, that is optimistically, that is the plan. We are still working as a team to identify the buildings. There's a lot of pieces that'll go into that, size, capacity, and then also funding. And that's been a conversation that we've been having with the board for the past several months, is making sure that this is at minimum cost neutral. We know that the budget challenges that we're facing, we want to make sure that we can afford the program in each. I think just anecdotally, it's been a pretty powerful to see the three schools in action and see where those kiddos were from the first day to where they are now, and get to see about the potential that they're going to have coming next year in kindergarten and as they progress. So the hope would be to get them in as many schools as possible, but with that conversation will be more to the board about feasibility and making sure that we have the space and capacity to do that at every building.
Thanks. One question I had was, you said there were 15 kids at the three elementaries, but that's 15 at each, right? So 45 altogether?
Correct.
Right. And so then filling a couple of spots at this time in the year, were those classrooms not full at the beginning of the year, or are these that we've had openings and now other kids are coming in?
Yep, we've maintained around 15 for the year, but we did have some movement, and so it allowed us to have some families that had been waiting or were interested, and we've added them since.
Trustee Mercer?
Could you remind me what the criteria are? And I guess I ask this because a parent was relaying a story to me that seemed to be an account of one of their friends just getting someone in without any criteria, but there's criteria to be in, right? Is that?
Yeah, in our application, we have 4 different areas into which we can accept a student, and they can be various criteria based on developmentally, it can be discretion, and it's a variety of different determinations to get in. Yep.
When you say discretion, so, I mean, is there a possibility that you have a slot and so you just are taking anyone because you want to fill it up to be efficient, or no?
Yeah, the process will be much more tight as we go into next year. We'll have a screener, and that process will begin in April. This year, you had a little more leeway, so you're balancing probably the dynamic of the classroom, the ability, all those different things that'll go into maybe a discretion choice by an administrator.
Trustee Decker?
Because we're able to have A and B for those students next year, but this year they're funded by a grant, correct?
Correct. We had a grant for this year, and then in arrears, we'll get the funding for next year for those 3 classrooms.
Just to add a little bit to that, the rule is the exceptionality rule. So exceptional circumstances when they apply are what we use to gauge whether or not students have access to it. That was written into the legislation. Next year, it shifts to a literacy component and not necessarily based on socioeconomics or other factors that could play a part in that. And then, so speaking to the grant funding, so the grant funding was for 2 years. So the A and B revenue that we'll realize going into next year for those students that were in the program actually allows us to expand at least 3 more classrooms. And so grant funded and A and B funded, we could have up to 8 classrooms. And if we wanted to have a 9th into our 9th elementary, we'd probably have to be looking at like interlocal agreement dollars or something to fund that for the 1 year, or some other source of funding. But that is the vision, and the goal is that we have neighborhood schools that have the ability to add that. But to Vinny's point, we have to look at enrollment. It's not feasible if we only have 5 students that enroll at, say, Paxson, or that are eligible at Paxson, to have a class of 5. It just financially doesn't fit. So we may be able to shift them to other locations, or some sort of plan to accommodate as many of those students as we can.
Trustee Mercer?
And so getting someone in right now makes a slot for future kids down the road, which is great. So, but the literacy, so is that like a test, or like what does that look like at a pre-K literacy threshold?
Yeah, it's, the Board of Public Ed has wrestled with this question, and they were tasked with developing, what is the standard for determining whether someone is going to be literate by the time they're third grade. So keeping in mind that there's also additional funding, there's another quarter A and B per student who is moving up through the grade levels to third grade. So we're actually looking at a Jumpstart program during the summer where we're providing an additional 120 hours to each student who qualifies based off of this assessment. And ultimately they gave districts the latitude to choose from a variety of assessments, but I don't know how functional it is. To be honest, like, I don't know what 4-year-olds would do on a test to demonstrate that they're going to be literate or not by the time they get to third grade. It's a science.
Any other trustee questions? Seeing none, this is the elementary motion. Is there a motion by elementary trustee to approve the recommendation? Moved by trustee Afgaris, second by trustee Decker. Any final trustee comments? Seeing none, any public comment on this agenda item? All those in favor for approving the recommendation, please indicate yes by raising your hand. Unanimous to all elementary trustees present. And now we'll move on to topic 2, which is to approve out-of-country field trip request. And this is over to you, Assistant Superintendent Shattuck.
Thank you. And I would like to introduce Dan Lockridge, who will be taking that trip, and he will give you some details about the trip. Thank you.
Hello, is this on? Yeah, okay. My name is Dan Lockridge. I've been teaching at Sentinel for 19 years, and I'm a Spanish teacher, and I've been taking a trip of students to Costa Rica every other year since 2010, except for the pandemic years. We had to put a little pause on it, but we went back again in 2023 and looking to do it again next year in 2025. We go during spring break as to limit the amount of time that the students will miss. So they usually miss one day, either the day before spring break or the day after spring break. We travel all over the country, have lots of opportunities to have authentic experiences where they get to meet actual Costa Ricans, spend time at a local high school, and then, of course, touring through the jungles and doing other fun, adventurous sort of things. So, are there any questions, I guess?
Any trustee questions?
Yes.
Vice Chair Walker-Andrews?
I can't talk. Do they do any kind of work projects, or is it just going to school and meeting people and field trips?
It's more of a cultural experience in that regard, so less of a work project, yeah.
Any other trustee questions? Seeing none, this is a high school motion. Is there a trustee that would move to approve? Moved by Vice Chair Walker-Andrews, second by trustee Afgaris. Any final trustee comments?
This is exciting, and thank you for providing this opportunity for these students. What I've missed in these couple of years that I've been on the board is a way for the students to come back and tell us what their trip was. So if I could just make another request, that we'd love to hear about it after you go, or even the ones that went in 2023.
Perfect.
It would be wonderful to have them talk about their experiences.
I'll see if I can round up a few to come and talk. You bet.
Any other final comments? Seeing none, any public comment on this agenda item? All trustees in favor for approving the recommendation, please indicate yes by raising your hand. Unanimous to all trustees present. Thank you and travel safe. All right, now we'll move on to topic 3, which is to approve the Sealy Swan High School calendar for 2024-2025. And this is over to you, Mr. Lebowski.
Yeah, hi. So once we set the regular high school calendar, Sealy and Willard and Jefferson then produced theirs based upon the rough framework. So I've spoken to Mr. Holmes up in Sealy a few times about this, and they meet the hours, and it's good to go. It's good with their school population.
Any trustee questions?
So we approved the others recently, but are there any major differences between them, since I don't have it in front of me?
There are a few. They start in August a little bit sooner than the rest of us. They obviously don't have Friday school. It's not, they do have it at times. And then their work days, another part of this is that we calculate work days, and their work days are also on point. But for the most part, it's fairly similar.
Any other trustee questions? Seeing none, this is a high school motion. Is there a motion to approve the recommendation? Moved by trustee Wake, second by trustee Efgaris. Any final trustee comments? Seeing none, any public comment on this agenda item? All trustees in favor for approving the calendar for Sealy Swan for 2025, 2024, 2025, please indicate yes by raising your hand. Unanimous to all trustees present. So now we are going to go into, we're going to adjourn the regular school board meeting and move into executive session for the superintendent's evaluation. So the time is now 6:21. And so we'll go ahead and end the regular school board meeting and go into executive session. Thank you, everyone.
Recording stopped.